Hello everybody, this is the video that I promised Unacceptable Babbitt. For all you who may remember, when I made a replying to comments video, Unacceptable Babbitt was rather, I guess the word here would be curious about how I said that Islam is not exactly a good religion, because if I do it, I'm going to end up going to jail. That's what I said in my New Year's resolution video last year. I said when I was considering religions, if I followed Islam, I was basically going to go to jail. And he said that Sunni Muslims, basically, they just remain loyal to the Prophet, and that's a lot of what most of what they do is about. However, I made a video reply to that in which I pointed out how Sunni Muslims, Sunni comes from the word Sunnah. It means to be like the Prophet. It's not just holding loyalty to him, it's actually being like him. And again, that's going to run into a problem if I was ever to try and consider being a Sunni Muslim, because there are some things Muhammad did you just can't do. And after I brought that up in the comment section of that video, Unacceptable Babbitt said, well, what about these things in Christianity? He brought up how Jesus in the New Testament said, bring those who do not want me to rule before them and slay them in front of me. He brought up slavery in the Old Testament. It's always a good one to bring up. And now, honestly, the very first thing I'd like to address is that thing he said, well, Jesus said bring the people before him who don't want him to rule over him and slay them. The problem with this, and generally it makes me angry when atheists bring this up, because it shows that they don't know what they're looking at. Probably went to some what's that website called? Evil Bible website, and just took the quote out of there. Jesus is telling a parable in that section of the Bible where he says that. He's speaking as a character in a story. Imagine if I was to say, once upon a time there was a king. The king said, go out there and murder your brothers and sisters. And you were to say, hey, look guys, Trey just said go murder your brothers and sisters. Some Christian, right? It's the same thing. Jesus Christ never really told people to go out there, get all the people who don't want him to rule before him, and kill them in front of him. Although there are some people who like to argue that, well, the point of the parable is still that Christians should go out there and murder people. That simply is not the case. If you pay attention to the parable, the whole point is that the king is supposed to represent the new world, or the new world order, I guess, who's going to persecute the Christians, and the Christians are not supposed to fight back. They are supposed to remain, loyal to Jesus' orders, and, they're never supposed to fight back, and the only way that the king, the new world order, will be overthrown is when Jesus returns. David Wood actually pointed out in his video, if you don't believe in Christianity, you should love this, because you don't believe Jesus is going to return. So when will, the Christians fight back and get their new world order and get rid of the new world order? Never. If you're an atheist, that's what you believe. So, atheists should actually love this. There are people out there, like the author of the book Zealot, who tries to make Jesus Christ out to be this warlord and a whole bunch of stuff. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, I guess you can. That guy sure did. But, yes, Unacceptable Babbitt, that was a parable. Jesus Christ never really said to kill people in front of him who didn't want him to rule over. Second thing is biblical slavery. He brought that up. This was my very first Sunday Apologetics ever post on Facebook. He said something like, well, you wouldn't follow biblical slavery, would you? Like, well, no, not nowadays. I mean, back in the Old Testament days and back in biblical days, I guess New Testament and Old Testament perhaps, but that's because I would have viewed it as something that was more necessary. For example, take some of the verses about slavery that atheists often like to point to. Trey, you would whip someone if they didn't tell you what to do? Now, hold on, because let's pay attention to the context here. The context here, especially when slavery was made, was that the Israelites just escaped Egypt, and they're wandering around, about 10,000 of them, in the middle of the desert, and, they're doing stuff for God until He leads them to the Promised Land. Now, the point is, of course, as just fleeing Egypt, you generally couldn't bring anything with you. You guys were slaves back then. So, and you probably heard this before, slavery was meant for people who needed someone basically to take care of them. And by the way, I stand by my point that slavery is not the right word there. I actually lived down the street from a Jewish community center, and I asked one of the men, the word for slave, abed, I asked him, what is that, how would you say worker in Hebrew, or someone who is like a servant to you? And he basically confirmed, yeah, that's the word you would use. But all in all, yes, if I was to do something for you, give you money, give you food, give you water, when, we're just traveling in the middle of the desert, I mean, you can't exactly afford to be charitable here. One atheist is like, well, I would just give them food, and I would just help them out because I'm a nice person. Well, good, you'd be a dead nice person because you gave all your food to someone else. The whole point is generally you work for me, I will give you food in return, and there. Now, if I give you something, and now you're not going to help me to get some more of that thing back, especially when you consider they didn't have food, they didn't have water, this is all explicitly said, people are bugging Moses like, oh, we're so thirsty, we're so hungry. Yeah, if we have a real little bit of food and water and I give you some and you try not helping me to get more, like working on my farm or something, I'm not a violent guy. I'm not saying I'm going to whip you. I'm just saying you are going to do the work. That's what I'm saying. And if you think that makes me cruel, okay, I guess I would have been a cruel person who survived back in those days, because, quite frankly, if that's called theft under false pretenses, even today, if you say I'm going to do something, I pay you for it, and you don't do it, you essentially stole from me. But either way, unacceptable, Babbitt, that is my reply to your 2 points that you made. I do not think biblical slavery is necessary today, mainly because we have more than enough to go around. We have homeless shelter, food pantries, thank you, you wonderful Christians. And essentially, yeah. So, that is the video. Just wanted to make this video. Thank you for the $20. And I hope that you really enjoyed it. What the heck? Hello? Who?